It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Auburn Podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. Presented by Fetch Me Home Delivery. Use promo code FetchMe20 for your first delivery free. If you live in Auburn or Opelika, they're going to take care of you. You can get home from a long day's work and you realize, oh man, I don't want to leave the house, or I don't have any food at home or anything you really want to eat, and you want to treat yourself. You can have your family meal delivered in 40 minutes or less. It's still hot by the time it gets to you. It's fantastic. The folks are always friendly. And yeah, you just use the free Fetch Me app or use their website, fetchmedelivery.com. And once again, use promo code FetchMe20 for your first delivery free. I believe Painter Sharpless is going to be joining us in a few minutes. He may crash in the studio. But I touched on this a little bit yesterday, and if you missed Michael and we had an instant reaction show to Auburn's loss in the Outback Bowl. We had it right after the game ended yesterday, and I touched on this a little bit, but I just want to stress, it's and I had a few people tweeting me as well, because I was extremely confident going into the Florida game and Auburn's chances to win, and I was extremely confident in Auburn's chances to beat Minnesota. And man, I whiffed big time. Once again, and of course, Minnesota winning 31-24, and it's such an interesting way of how they lost, because if you told me going into this game that Auburn scored 24 points, I would have said, okay, Auburn's going to win. Just looking at the Minnesota offense and Auburn's defense, I just assumed that the defense would be fired up and want to play hard for Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson, and this senior-laden defense, I thought they'd want to go out strong, and they just looked tired towards the end of the game. They started out great with Javaris Davis getting that pick. I thought it was going to be a pick six for a second, but they do that. It's a 3-and-out. They got to kick a field goal, and it just seemed like every time they made a solid stand, it was a 3-and-out by the offense. And a lot of people are saying, it was tired, it was time of possession, and my thing is they've been dealing with that all year. So I really don't think that was it. I think there was a lack of motivation there. And I know a lot of the anti-Gus Bus people are going to say, hey, yeah, it's because Gus can't motivate a team, now 2-4 in bowl games. And so you look at it as like you killed the Purdue team last year, and then you won the Birmingham Bowl. And when you look at the bowl games that Auburn have played in, so I think some pretty respectable bowls. The Outback Bowl twice, the Peach Bowl, and then the Sugar Bowl where Oklahoma cleaned you up pretty good. So you got to win some of those. Now, month off has not been good to Gus Malzahn, which is interesting because he's been so good in bowl games. But there's some interesting discussion throughout Auburn Twitter, and I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts on this and reach out whichever way you feel. But does one game change how the future looks for this Auburn football program? And I think there's two instances to look at. I think there's two games to look at here as far as saying, I think it's interesting how we overreact to a game-by-game basis. Because the argument for, hey, the future looks great is, well, the Outback Bowl, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. The only reason it means anything is because Auburn lost. But also, one game. It's crazy how much one game changes the perception of things, because the game before that was what? It was the Iron Bowl. And Auburn wins the Iron Bowl, and folks think, everything is honky-dory. Everything is great. So it's just amazing to me how one game can change the perception of what the next few years of this program looks like. And it goes both ways. It can be positive, like it was with the Iron Bowl, or it can be negative, like it is currently with the Outback Bowl. And I think natural expectations should be somewhere in the middle of those two. Obviously, Auburn pulled out all the stops in the Iron Bowl, and they didn't really pull out any stops outside of a weird Aaron Sipos fake punt and a bunch of, Bo Nix lining up as the punter with Auburn, going for it and lining up on fourth down, which I was cool with that. I was fine with all of those. The offensive play calling was interesting to me. The constant reliance on needing to run the football. And I get that's the Malzahn thing, but at some point you just got to abandon the running game. You were not going to be able to run on Minnesota. You weren't. And Auburn wasn't able to. And it didn't matter if Boobie Whitlow was in there or DJ Williams. Sean Shivers on, his outside zone or the jet sweep that they love to do with him. And it's just gotten so predictable. And I really hope, for Auburn's sake, and if you're listening to this show, just for your happiness moving forward, I really, really hope that Chad Morris has a big influence on the offense. Because if it continues to look like it did yesterday, it's going to be an issue. But Auburn fans join the rest of America in being extremely bummed out because Outback is giving away free coconut shrimp today instead of a bloomin' onion. Can you agree with that, Painter Sharpless?
I think so. This is not one that really upsets me. This is not an argument that I feel compelled to jump in. A lot of people are very passionate about this. I'm not.
Are you a big Outback goer?
Fair, like I do like Outback when I go. I probably average it about once every 4 years. So it's not like I'm frequenting it.
Okay.
But when I go, the experience is more than adequate.
Okay, fair enough. You and I texted a little bit last night about this game. How dumb were we?
I was a little hot when I sent you those messages. I think you're like, all right, guy, it's not all that. But yeah, I was not thrilled. I had said the word I used repeatedly over the last 3 weeks, Zach, was I thought that they should stamp this team. I really didn't think that and this is a similar analogy that I used last year, but it's not as drastic of a case. Like when Auburn was playing Purdue, it was just obvious that Purdue was at best an average team.
Yeah.
And on a bad day, they just really weren't very good.
Right.
Minnesota's not in this category because they beat a top 5 team. They played in a good conference. They won 11 games this year. So there's a lot about this team it's a first basically for 115 years and a number of firsts at that for PJ Fleck. But this team does not have the talent that Auburn has. It does not have some of the experience Auburn has. So I was disappointed in a lot of ways. I was surprised. But I guess the more I thought about it, Zach, the frustrating thing was my surprise is my own fault. I set myself up for this failure.
Yeah, you and I were texting about this. It's like, why would we assume otherwise at this point?
Your wins in bowl games have come against bad teams. Memphis, when Paxton Lynch was the next greatest thing, and I admittedly do not know what I'm watching when I watch football, but I could tell you back then.
I thought he was awesome.
That Paxton Lynch was just not going to be that great of an NFL quarterback.
I whiffed on that one big time. Big time.
But anyway, I mean, you beat a Memphis team in the, wait for it, Birmingham Bowl, and then you beat a bad Purdue team and wait for it, whatever bowl was in Nashville last year. What bowl was that?
Music City.
So, yeah, that's on me.
Well, you weren't alone. I was right there with you. So
I'm glad you guys brought this up. I felt like
Michael Papp is joining us now.
In retrospect,
back from Texas.
In retrospect, I felt like I should have gloated more on yesterday's podcast.
You think so?
What was
you
his
guys?
prediction?
I thought Auburn would win, admittedly, but
so you were wrong too.
Yeah, but
you were wrong too.
You guys
were just
showed up.
less wrong.
Correct.
You're going to gloat about being less wrong.
Yeah, very correct. Yes.
You were the one that was pumping the brakes. Like, for the last 3 weeks, you were the guy that was
But you still predicted them to win.
That is correct. Less wrong, though. So that's correct in my
hedging,
book.
but successfully.
Fair enough.
Hi, this is David Locke, CEO of the Locked On Podcast Network. Instead of saying my name right now, we could be saying your business's name and reaching local, passionate sports fans just like you. Unlike any other podcast, Locked On gives your local company the unique ability to reach local podcast listeners. Not just any podcast listener, a Locked On podcast listener. If your company wants to connect with local sports fans, a predominantly male audience that's well-educated with disposable income, then let's put your company right here on this Locked On podcast. Local fans love to support local businesses. Text the word advertising to 33777 or visit lockedonpodcast.com/advertising and let us know who you are. We'll get our team to help you out and achieve Locked On advertising success. Once again, text the word advertising to 33777. That's advertising to 33777 or visit lockedonpodcast.com/advertising. We look forward to talking to you.
All right, guys, let's answer an email. And Painter, I think this question is kind of right up your alley.
Oh, God.
This is from Danny. No, it's a serious question. There was nothing negative intended by that. Danny asked, and you can email the show, lockedonauburn@gmail.com. Guys, who do you think steps up at D tackle next year with Derek Brown leaving this year? War Eagle.
Michael, you leaned right into the microphone. The guy I'm most eager to see is not at that position. It's Derek Hall playing end.
He looked
that
good yesterday.
That does not answer the question, though. Michael, I'll let you take it because you seemed eager.
Oh, I was just looking at you because Zach was, but I think the answer is Tyrone Truesdale. Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty obvious. I think he is a beast, and that next year we could see him take a step forward to become a dominant interior defensive lineman. I know he's different than Derek Brown. Derek Brown is, I don't want to say more nimble, but he seems to be,
It's a fair word choice for a guy that's that size and can still do what he does. I think that's a good word choice, Michael.
Yeah, I think Daquan Newkirk is an interesting situation. If he can just stay healthy, that's the biggest question, regarding
They've been
Newkirk.
excited about him when he's available.
Yeah, but the last 2 years he's been battling all these injuries. I think Connis Miller is an interesting player. I think he's going to play more of that 3 technique that Truesdale does. But can Truesdale play where Derek Brown did? I think that's a question. Can he play nose guard?
I don't have the answer to that, but I do like that answer. That is, if I'm a betting man, that's where I go. In part because of, I think what you just mentioned, the obvious part. Like, if Newkirk is healthy, it'll be fascinating to see how he contributes. But for me right now, the safe answer, I think, has to be the one Michael said.
Yeah, but your boy yesterday off the end, he looked good. He played a lot more.
Reasons to be encouraged. And what did y'all think about the defense's performance? Because this is the first time all year that
it was really bad.
Yeah, and for the first time all year, Auburn fans found themselves at odds with the defense because it's the first time you went out there and went, they didn't just carry you.
Well, I said this before you guys came in, but if you told me going into it that that Auburn scores 24 points, I say Auburn wins, and that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case at all. So I wonder how much of it had to do with just being outplayed. It definitely didn't look like they wanted to be out there. I don't think they enjoyed playing defense.
I wonder how much of those guys, they said they weren't going to play half speed, and I get that answer.
It seems like they did play half speed.
It seems like a lot of guys, especially who knew that they had things ahead of them, were moving at 85%. And I don't blame them because I was the one out in front saying, if I were Derek Brown or Marlon Davidson, I'd do the selfish thing and not play. Yeah. I wouldn't have played if I were in their shoes. But you play and talk about not wanting to go unless you're going to go full speed. And at least to me, I can't gauge them since I'm not there, obviously. But it didn't look like the defense we watched for the last 3 months.
All right, let's look at some voicemails. You can call the Locked On Auburn podcast voicemail at 205-502-4285. I think the ones that we're playing today, they're all kind of old, but I wanted to play this first one specifically just in response to, okay, you can act like things are bad. You can act like things are terrible. But, let's play this voicemail.
Hey, Zach, this is Greg, Huntsville, Alabama. Huge fan of the show. I just want to talk about what a massive signing day that Gus Malzahn and the staff had. I'm ecstatic. Bringing in Tisdale, Reed, Romello Height, all just massive, massive wins. The only miss of the day really was Dallas Walker, and that one hurt. But I think we ended up going 4 out of 5 on potential targets, so that's huge. If Gus can close out with Broderick Jones in February, and if he gets him, and then if we can lock down maybe McKinley Jackson, I think this is probably the best overall class Gus has ever had. One of the better overall classes, period. But just super proud of the staff. What an amazing day. Signing day typically is not a fun day for Auburn. There's usually flips. We didn't have anybody flip against us. It was a good day. I almost quit my job. I was so happy. I'm just kidding. But you guys keep up the great work. Love the show. War Down Eagle. Thanks, Greg.
I play that one first because I think Auburn would rather have their signing class and lose the Outback Bowl than win the Outback Bowl and lose on some of those guys.
Yeah, the game is just frustrating. It doesn't actually matter, but it matters in that if you're competitive, you want to win, and if you want an opportunity to beat another 10-win team, and I think we can get to this, but Auburn played was it half a dozen 11-win teams this year?
It's crazy.
Alabama, LSU, Florida, Georgia, Minnesota. Am I leaving any? Oregon? So,
Yeah.
that's pretty insane.
That's wild.
But you're right. And then to the other point, I think it is his best class, hands down, since he's been the head coach at Auburn. Some people will point to that 2014 season, which would make a lot of sense. But in hindsight, and we don't have this yet for this year's class, so many of those guys did not pan out.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Sure.
Is Chandler Morris a senior right now?
I believe
Or is he
he's
a
being
junior?
recruited. I believe he's a senior being recruited, but I'll check on that. You're talking about Morris's son, who's
Chad Morris's son. Okay, that's what I thought. And then he obviously didn't sign, and no one was really talking about him on signing day. And I was like, maybe I've just been wrong this whole time. And he's a junior, and whatever. And then
I think he's a 2020 guy.
I do too. I thought
Painter's checking on that.
I thought he was coming, and that's why people were
he's
like,
a 2020 guy, dual threat, 4-star.
So and from what I've seen, people think Auburn's got a pretty good shot at him.
Well, he was committed to Arkansas to play for his dad.
That's what I was going to say. If for no other reason than his dad is employed by the
Yeah, and
university.
I think a lot of people say, well, his dad probably won't be here by the time he's a starter. I think that's okay. Like you're already family friends with the head coach, and the offenses are similar, and you've seen a coach's son come in as a freshman and have some success for whatever that is worth. So I would say, on top of that, Auburn is in a position that a lot of schools are in where you go after, although he's a 4-star for whatever that is also worth. But
I think he visited Oklahoma recently too. And if I'm a quarterback at Oklahoma,
Why would you
wants
not?
me, I'm going to play
Why would you
football
not?
at Oklahoma.
Interesting you say that because their 5-star quarterback recruit just decommitted.
And
Right.
his mom graduated from Auburn, so that's interesting.
And then also I would say, like, schools like Auburn, those top tier, well, we can debate about the whole top tier thing, but most schools in the SEC that are competing for championships and other conferences are going to have to start having backup plans at quarterback. And I think, not to diss him, but that's kind of what this is. Like, if you can get a 3-star or a 4-star guy who's committed and willing to stick around and knows he's not going to come in and start right away, I think in the age of seeing quarterbacks leave, it's a really smart move.
All right, we got a voicemail about the running back situation, and I think that is a big issue that we saw on the field yesterday. So let's take a listen.
Hey guys, this is Ben from North Georgia. So I had a couple of questions for you on coaching. How long do we give Carnell Williams in the future, considering this is now 2 straight seasons? Granted, it's his first season as running back coach, but how many years do we give him before the lack of 1,000-yard production or a back without 1,000 yards is basically time to move on and find somebody else new? I mean, we're going on 2 years now. Also, don't you think Cody Burns should get a whole lot more credit for what he's doing, considering that we used to have significant problems with wide receivers dropping balls, and now we've had very good production for at least 2 or 3 straight years out of the wide receiver groups that he's coached in. And also, one last thing just to throw out there, since y'all are media, obviously. But if you ever need a feel-good story, the new incoming tackle, Brendan Coffey, coming from California, he's from the town that burned down last year in the Camp Fire in 2018.
Wow.
Where the entire town was wiped out, and 95% of it, all the structures were burned. So if you ever need something to kind of poke around on, he'd be a good one to do. Anyways, War Eagle, hope you all have a good Christmas.
Hey, thank you so much, and I think that was Ben, so we appreciate that. So, yeah, the first thing, how long with Carnell Williams, as far as Auburn not having 1,000-yard rushers the past 2 seasons? Obviously we only need to judge him on this past season. I think his starter, Boobie Whitlow, I don't think he's an SEC running back. I think he is an athlete that was just kind of forced there. And then you look at it, it's like DJ Williams, a true freshman. We saw glimpses of how good he could be. And I kind of think if DJ Williams would have started the whole year, he would have had a chance to be a 1,000-yard rusher. But with this offensive line, to an extent, it doesn't really matter who you have back there. Unless he's an extremely special player, there just wasn't space. And there's not a whole lot of guys that are good at creating their own space consistently in the SEC, and especially against, Painter Mitch and all the 10-win teams that Auburn played this year. So I'm willing to give him a little bit of a pass there, especially since these aren't his running backs. I think once Tank Bigsby's back there, I think it changes it a little bit. So
I don't think the problem is the running backs, and I think that answer the answer to that question matters in that what's the rest of the team doing? Are they a more pass happy team like they were this year? Are there multiple backs, or are you leaning on one guy? Like if it had been a healthy Boobie Whitlow all year and there had been no DJ Williams, I'd probably be disappointed if he didn't get to 1,000 yards.
Sure.
However, if
he got hurt. He was on pace for 1,000 yards, and then when he got injured.
They're starting to shift their philosophy. I mean, Trey Mason had 42 carries or something in one game a few years ago. Like, they're just probably not as likely. Cameron Petway against Mercer had like 34. I don't think that they're as likely to do that anymore, so that hurts you. I'm less concerned about the 1,000 yards as I am about how productive is the offense and how productive is the group as a whole.
Yeah. Then the Cody Burns comment, I've said this before, I said if Auburn was going to promote from within as far as addressing the offensive coordinator thing, obviously Chad Morris was a home run hire, but if they were to promote from within, we did a show on this. I think it was with you, Michael. My pick was Cody Burns. I really like what he's done so far from recruiting, from scheme, and then I think the wide receivers at Auburn are getting better. I wish they could all stay healthy more with Will Hastings and Eli Stove and Anthony Schwartz missing a few games here and there. So I would have liked to seen that. Seth Williams' development has been awesome. Now, how much of that is Cody and how much of that is Seth Williams as being a really good receiver, I don't think we'll ever fully know. But I am excited to see some of these young receivers get better, especially next year when it looks like the offense is going to be more pass heavy. What are y'all's thoughts on what Cody Burns has done?
I don't know how much the caller specifically referred to the receivers catching the ball more. I'm not sure how much of that is on Cody and how much of that is on the receivers that are playing now versus a couple years ago, just having better hands. But
I do like that Auburn is getting receivers.
Yeah,
and in the past, they would get like athletes
and put them at receiver.
And put them at receiver. So I think that's a big difference for sure.
Definitely. I mean, you're bringing in guys who've run routes. By the time they leave, they'll have run routes for 7 years.
Yeah,
for most of them. So hopefully that can continue.
I don't know the ins and outs of the position of running routes of the what someone adds like Shedrick Jackson, where he's.
But the bottom line is that guy can get open.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
And so my biggest contention point is I see one guy doing that. I see Seth Will, and then it's like one read. Even someone like me who's got a pretty limited analysis can tell you that he's often, or at least it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like he's looking for Seth Williams, and if Seth isn't there, then the second option, if it's a completion, it's like, I can't believe they completed that. Mm-hmm. It seems like he, and I'm not so worried, like people are like, he's not going through his progressions. Like, one, he's a freshman. Two, that's not super uncommon in college.
You don't do that in college. The coaching staff doesn't want you to.
And the offense, Malzahn's not asking him to do that. So he's not Tom Brady.
Right.
But also, like, can someone else be consistent? And can someone else be a consistent pass catcher? It's that simple. Like, people say, well, Schwartz is when he gets opportunities. I agree. I don't, maybe that's on Gus and the offensive staff, but it doesn't. For some reason, they're hesitant to give him the ball in big games, and I don't know if it's something like that fumble in the Iron Bowl was part of it. And then he, I don't know. It's weird to me. There seems to be one reliable receiver on this team right now.
I have a question. Does Seth Williams get open? Because it seems to me like the majority of the time they throw him the ball, it is on those back shoulder fade routes.
I don't know. Do you do the film analysis at your Twitter a lot? And that's a good point. Like on the first drive of the game, they threw the ball to him in the end zone because they had 11-yard field to score a touchdown. Mm-hmm. I think the ball got batted away. So is he open a lot? I don't know. I don't know what kind of separation he gets. His freshman year.
I mean, some guys need less separation than others.
Yeah.
But, it's easier for Seth Williams to get open than it is for other guys. I mean, that's definitely an element of it.
I'm not trying to hate on him. He's obviously had a very, very good season. He's got great hands. He has got really good body control to go up and get the ball. But I just kind of feel like a lot of times when we talk about him, it sounds like he's like wide open all the time. And I think that he makes a lot of very good contested catches, and a lot of times he's running those comeback routes.
Those are definitely the ones that you remember, but I mean, I think there's a lot of the times where it's an 8-yard gain and like nobody was near him.
That's true.
I guess I'm excited about the players that they've recruited at wide receiver. I just haven't seen it amount to much. Like there are players who I'm excited about when you watch their tape in high school and you go, man, I could really see Javarius Johnson or Matthew Hill or Eli Stove or Seth Williams.
What about Shedrick Jackson? I mean, they've wanted him on the field this year. They trust him blocking, and in the past that gets you on the field. It gets you opportunities. If I had to pick a guy that has the biggest difference in like receiving yards from this year to next year, to me, I'm picking Shedrick Jackson.
I agree.
That's the guy I'm going with.
I think I would go with someone like Javarius Johnson. It's a little bit hard to do that because I'm predicting that out of someone we haven't seen. Like at least Cedric Jackson's on the field, and it seems like Bo Nix is trying to throw to him, even though his greatest asset right now seems to be blocking. Bo Nix likes to throw it his way.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a bad choice. I think I would guess towards someone we just haven't seen as much from. And I'm still disappointed about Matthew Hill. Last year,
it's wild.
All the conversation was about him being the freshman wide receiver that stepped up. Great for Seth that turned out to be him instead. But I thought, okay, now you add Matthew Hill into the mix with Seth Williams. I thought it would be a really nice pairing.
Painter, where can people find you and hear you, brother?
Please listen to The Lunch Break on ESPN 1067. If you like this podcast, I think you will enjoy what it is Justin and I talk about. Zach and Michael join us. And also you can hear that at ESPNAU.com, the ESPN 1067 app, and I'm at Paint Sharpless on Twitter.
And on Saturday, you and I will be reunited again after the game basketball edition.
Yes.
You and I will be broadcasting live from the Auburn Hotel following each and every Auburn basketball game. That's every Saturday. So I guess what is like the next 8 weeks, 9 weeks, something like that?
Yeah, we've got the Auburn game in Starkville, so you're probably not going. If you are, Bruce brought this up, a good opportunity to get tickets is actually away games because Auburn's selling out a lot of their home games. But if you're going to be in town, swing by the hotel in downtown, have a beverage with us. I forget, what's the name of that pasta? Is it pasta carbonara that you and I like? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing
gosh,
it.
It's so good.
Anyway.
Yeah, we'll be there. Michael, where can people find you and hear you, boss?
Follow me on Twitter at CouchPapTato. I just want to paint a picture for everyone here in the room really fast before we leave. Zach showed up today in what appears to be a new, very nice-looking Patriots quarter zip.
Yep.
It is a good
Beautiful.
Quarter zips are great.
And across the table, we got Painter Sharpless, who has showed up to work
Very casually.
in one of the cooler hats I've seen in a while.
Bills Mafia.
Shout out to the Paul Chesky
Which has
clan.
Bills Mafia. You guys going to fight after this?
No, I think the Bills will beat the Texans, and I think the Titans will beat the Patriots. So the Bills will go farther in the postseason than New England this year.
I am so fascinated about the Pats because like until they lose, I'm not going to say what you just said.
I think they're going to get killed on Saturday.
They might, Zach. They might. But you know what? I'm not going to do that to myself.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, where can people find you and hear you, bud?
Follow me on Twitter at CouchPapTato.
Love it. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Auburn. Follow me on Twitter at Z Blackerby. This has been another edition of the Locked On Auburn podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.